The opposite of love isn't hate. It's selfishness. It's treating your spouse as though you are more important than they are, that what you have to say, your ideas, your opinions, are somehow of more value or worth than theirs. Listen to Isaiah chapter 47 and verse 8 as Isaiah describes Nebuchadnezzar and the root of every problem that you'll experience in your marriage. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. You show me any crisis or any problem, and no matter what it is, it can be traced back to this. Your problem may be financial, it may be marital, may come under one of 100 different labels, but its cause is always the same. You find it in churches, you find it in schools and offices, and the most tragic thing is that you find it even in Christian homes. Isaiah 53:6 says, All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. That's the root of sin. That's the cause of conflict. That's the cause of every crisis and problem under the sun. Sin comes in many different forms, but the underlying motive behind every sin is, I am, and there is none else beside me. I just do what I want to do. And so behind every broken relationship lies this root of sin. And marriages are ripped apart because one or both partners are saying, I am, and there is none else beside me. The problem may express itself in many different forms, but the underlying motivating factor is always the same. Even in marriages that may physically stay together, many experience what the experts have termed psychological divorce. This is where husband and wife live together in the same house, but they don't communicate. There's no intimacy, there is no oneness. Most marriage troubles and conflicts are really character issues, they're sin issues. And that's one of the greatest benefits of marriage that we don't often think about. In marriage, we are confronted day after day with our own selfishness and our own sin. Now, that's not our normal focus, because we tend to focus on the sins and selfishness of our spouse. And when we do that, there is tension and conflict. But when you begin to pursue Christ-likeness and focus instead on your own sins and selfishness, marriages are transformed. Can you imagine what it's like when both husband and wife are pursuing Christ-likeness together? When you're more concerned about meeting your spouse's needs than having your own needs met? When you treat your spouse with tenderness and gentleness rather than being harsh and critical? When you fail and hurt your spouse and you ask their forgiveness and forgiveness is tenderly given in return? That kind of marriage is like a heaven upon earth. But you can't have that kind of marriage without dying to self. You can't have that kind of marriage without putting the needs and wishes of your spouse ahead of your own. You can't have that kind of marriage without tenderness and gentleness and kindness. You can't have that kind of marriage until you begin to deal with selfishness and die to self. Most marriages in trouble have died the wrong way. We tend to die emotionally to one another rather than dying to self. And when we die emotionally to our spouse, there is no tenderness or affection. Instead, there's blame and resentment and isolation. There's the overarching feeling of, well, I just don't care. And that's fatal for any relationship. Don't settle for that. Don't go there. God has so much better plans for your marriage than that. There's a better choice, and there are choices that you can make today that can build your marriage up rather than tearing it down. And I'm talking primarily to husbands. This is where you need to show leadership. This is where you need to lead by example. Being the spiritual leader in your home is not about usurping authority and lording it over your wife and family. That's not what the Bible teaches. It's about being a servant. It's about dying to self and putting your wife's needs and feelings ahead of your own. It's about getting on your knees and asking the Lord each day to open your eyes to the ways in which you can serve your wife and family. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's selfishness. And we can't effectively fulfill the biblical commandment to love our wives without daily, intentionally dying to self.